Men are beginning to notice a truth that never appears in wedding speeches, relationship, advice columns, or glossy lifestyle ads. Remaining single is not a failure of character. It is often a rational, strategic, and self respecting decision, not just at 25, but at 45, 55, and beyond. This perspective is not born of bitterness. It is not anger, resentment, or hostility toward women. I like women. I date women. I enjoy female company, conversation, intimacy, and companionship. What I reject is the assumption that modern marriage is automatically a wise or necessary step for men. What I reject is the idea that refusing to gamble your entire future is somehow evidence of fear, immaturity, or emotional deficiency. Staying single is not anti love, it is pro clarity. It is the decision to examine incentives, outcomes, and patterns honestly instead of emotionally. It is the willingness to look at how systems actually work rather than how they are marketed. And once a man does that, once he strips away sentiment and examines the terrain as it truly is, remaining single begins to look less like avoidance and more like intelligent risk management. The real question is not whether marriage can work. In rare cases, with the right people, timing, and circumstances, it can. The real question is why a man should accept unlimited downside risk when the upside is uncertain, fragile, and increasingly outside his control. Why should he place everything he has built his time, his income, his emotional stability, his future autonomy into an agreement where the exit penalties are extreme and often permanent? Single life is not about isolation. It is about leverage. It is about preserving optionality. It is about maintaining ownership over the few things a man truly possesses in this world. The first of those things is his earning power. A man's income is not just money, it is stored effort. It represents years of discipline, delayed gratification, skill development, stress tolerance, and persistence. It is the physical manifestation of time and energy converted into value. When a man remains single, he maintains full custody of that power. 100% of what he earns remains under his direct command. There are no silent negotiations, no gradual financial drift, no slow bleed disguised as lifestyle upgrades, no pressure to normalize spending patterns that were never aligned with his goals. Money remains a tool, not a battleground. In many marriages, finances slowly become contested territory, not because either person is malicious, but because incentives diverge. Spending justified as comfort, aesthetics, or social signaling accumulates quietly. Individually, each expense appears harmless. Collectively, they delay freedom by decades. Renovations that do not increase resale value. Vehicles chosen for image rather than utility. Vacations taken to escape domestic tension rather than genuine curiosity. None of this looks dangerous in isolation. Together, it erodes a man's future. Single men do not negotiate with anyone about whether to invest, save, move, or pivot. They decide and they live with the consequences themselves. That feedback loop creates responsibility, clarity, and discipline. There is no resentment because there is no forced compromise. There is also a reality most men only discover when it is too late. Family court is not neutral ground. It does not reward effort, loyalty, or fairness. It rewards leverage. Marriage exposes a man's entire financial life to a system where exit penalties can follow him for decades. Alimony alone has pushed capable, hardworking men into bankruptcy, depression, and early decline. Remaining single removes that risk entirely. No court can redistribute assets it never had jurisdiction over. No contract can be weaponized if it was never signed. This is not paranoia. It is an understanding of incentives. Financial control also enables strategic patience. A single man can delay gratification with purpose. He can stack capital, invest aggressively, and plan his life on his own timeline. He can travel at 50 instead of 70, semi-retire early, take calculated risks while his energy and adaptability are still high. None of this requires permission. None of it requires consensus. Wealth compounds best in silence, not negotiation. Money does not buy happiness, but financial autonomy buys calm. And calm is priceless. When a man's resources answer only to him, stress drops. Decision-making sharpens. Confidence rises. Once a man experiences that level of control, he rarely surrenders it willingly. Lifestyle freedom is difficult to appreciate until it is gone. When a man lives alone, his home becomes a functional extension of his mind. Everything has a purpose. The space reflects how he actually lives, not how it is supposed to look to outsiders. There is no decorative clutter, no unused rooms, no environments designed for social approval rather than utility. Order returns. Function replaces performance. Control over one's environment matters far more than most men realize. Temperature alone determines sleep quality. Single men do not negotiate thermostats. They sleep deeply. Energy returns. Focus sharpens. The same applies to noise, lighting, and daily rhythm. You wake when your body is ready. You work when your mind is sharp. You rest without guilt or commentary. Food becomes fuel, again, not a recurring emotional negotiation. You eat what works for your body in amounts that support performance. Clothing follows the same logic. You dress for function and identity, not approval. There is no pressure to buy things you do not need to maintain a certain image next to someone else. Comfort, durability, and purpose replace optics. Entertainment changes as well. You watch what interests you. You travel where curiosity pulls you. You leave when it makes sense and stay when it is fulfilling. There is no resentment built from constant compromise because compromise is no longer required. Hobbies stop needing justification, whether it is restoring engines, learning to fly, building companies, mastering weapons, collecting gear, or pursuing difficult skills. Your interests do not need validation. Time invested in mastery is no longer questioned. Friendships survive in this environment. Single men tend to maintain long-term friendships because there is no filtering imposed by a partner who disapproves of personalities, humor, or shared history. You choose your circle based on loyalty and experience, not optics. This autonomy produces something increasingly rare: mental quiet. Daily life stops feeling like a negotiation table. Decisions shrink back to their proper size. When a man controls his space, he controls his pace. And once he experiences that clarity, returning to restriction feels less like love and more like confinement. Another widely sold myth is that commitment guarantees intimacy. In reality, desire thrives on freedom, not obligation. When a man is single, his dating life is often more alive, more honest, and more reciprocal. Attraction is not assumed. It is earned and mutually chosen. Contrast this with many long-term marriages, where sexual energy follows a predictable decline, frequent at the beginning, occasional after a few years, then rationed, scheduled, or quietly withdrawn. Not because the man deteriorated, but because leverage shifted. Single men remain attractive because complacency has consequences. They train, they groom, they maintain standards. There is no safety net of obligation cushioning decline. Women sense this immediately. A man who is not trying to lock anyone down radiates abundance. He is evaluating, not auditioning. Ironically, this makes him more desirable than the man signaling permanent surrender. Dating without long-term entanglement also removes illusions. You observe behavior as it is, not as it is promised to become. When attraction fades, you do not negotiate it back. You walk. That alone preserves self-respect. Intimacy becomes something shared because both people want it, not because a contract implies it is owed. There is no pressure to perform roles or maintain appearances. You enjoy connection while it is real and release it when it is not. Optionality is another underestimated advantage. A single man can interact with different personalities, ages, and dynamics without tying his future to any one outcome. He learns faster. He adapts. He stops romanticizing potential and starts responding to patterns. This builds discernment, not cynicism. You do not hate women. You understand them better. For men who already have children from previous relationships, remaining single often improves fatherhood. There is less interference, fewer power struggles, and clearer boundaries. You show up as a grounded presence rather than a man drained by constant relational tension. Children notice stability. Sex, at its best, is relaxed, playful, and mutual. It does not survive well under expectation or emotional debt. Single life protects that energy. It allows attraction to exist without becoming obligation. One of the first changes men notice after choosing single life is how quiet everything becomes. Not empty, quiet. No constant emotional noise. No background tension. No minor issue escalating into a multi-day conflict. Life stops feeling monitored. This has real physiological effects. Chronic relationship stress elevates cortisol, disrupts sleep, dulls focus, and erodes motivation. Many men normalize this state because they have never experienced anything else. Once the pressure is removed, the contrast is shocking. Energy returns. Rest becomes restorative. Men lose weight, regain muscle tone, and appear visibly younger, not because of genetics, but because the nervous system finally stabilizes. Single men also maintain friendships longer. Long-term relationships often isolate men socially. Time gets rationed. Spontaneity disappears. When a man is single, continuity returns. Identity stabilizes. Emotional volatility decreases. Mental health improves, though it is rarely framed this way. Without constant criticism, passive aggression, or emotional unpredictability, baseline mood levels out. Calm becomes the default, not the reward. There's a popular narrative that marriage extends male lifespan. What is often ignored is quality of life. A peaceful single man who trains, eats well, sleeps deeply, and manages his time outperforms a chronically stressed married man on nearly every health marker. Health thrives in stable conditions. Single life provides that stability. Another rarely discussed consequence of long-term relationships is gradual emasculation. It is seldom overt. It arrives through correction, criticism, and constant adjustment. Over time, a man learns his instincts are inconvenient, his preferences negotiable, his confidence supervised. Single life removes that pressure. A man speaks freely. He decides without apology. He stops anticipating reactions before acting. Emotional steadiness returns. Masculine energy does not thrive under constant monitoring. When vigilance disappears, decisiveness returns. Confidence stabilizes. Self-respect grows. Freedom encourages exploration and risk. These behaviors keep drive alive. When initiative is punished and caution rewarded, edge dulls. Single life restores that edge without recklessness. Career growth also benefits. Focus becomes uninterrupted. Nights are used to build, not recover. Weekends become leverage points instead of emotional repair zones. Over time, this compounds. Skills stack, networks widen, income scales, personal development accelerates. A man can reinvent himself without asking permission. New bodies, new cities, new skills. Growth does not threaten anyone. Finally, there's legal exposure. Marriage is not just emotional, it is contractual. The exit terms are unforgiving. Asset division, custody, disputes, long term obligations. These are not rare outcomes, they are common. Even modern dating carries reputational risk. A single man with boundaries reduces exposure. Caution is not fear, it is intelligence. When everything is stripped down, the case for remaining single is not ideological, it is practical. Single life offers freedom, control, and stability that modern marriage often cannot match. This path is not about avoiding commitment, it is about refusing agreements where downside is unlimited and upside uncertain. Single life offers guarantees, autonomy, exit options, self direction. A man can still date, connect, love, and enjoy intimacy without surrendering leverage. That is not selfishness, it is alignment. The world will continue selling marriage as a universal solution. It is not. For many men, it is a high risk gamble disguised as virtue. Staying single is not rebellion, it is strategy. It is the decision to evolve without chains, to grow without permission, and to protect what you are building while you still can.